Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to Tisa's Rants and Musings. All right, I hope you guys have been well. Come on in the room. I want to give you a few minutes to get in here. I know there are quite a few people at different events tonight. So come on in, though. Come on in. If you're available, come on in and let's just have this conversation. There's so much that has happened since the last time we spoke. Last time we were on the show, so much has happened. So much is going on in the world. So come on in the room, invite a friend, and let's talk about it because I don't know about you, but it's been quite disheartening and so many words we can put to what's been happening in the world today, in these days. So come on in the room. I'll give a few minutes, a few folks to come on in. But yeah, I want us to talk. We really need to talk about this. What does it mean to be Christian? Because I'm so confused right now. What's politics got to do with Jesus? So let's talk about it, especially if you have strong opinions. You may hear something different and new to contemplate. So yeah, come on in, come on in, come on in. Come on in the room. Yes. I want to definitely give a few people a chance. Drop a comment. Let me know you're here so that I know when I can go ahead and get started. Let me know you're here. I pray everyone is well. We got a lot going on. COVID numbers are going back up. People are getting sick. You know, these are troubling and praying times. So I pray you are well. Come on in. Come on in. Drop a comment. Let me know you're here. Just before I get started, and you guys know me, I'll get started anyway with you in the room because when you get here, and then you can always watch the replay at any moment. But I definitely want us to have this conversation. So come on in, come on in. It'll be good to reconnect. I want to thank you guys too. So come on in. I'm gonna give it one more minute. Tag your friends, let them know to come on in the room. So yeah, come on in. All right, come on in. Hey, Kristen, how are you? Good to see you. Come on in the room, my people. Come on in. My mother tells me to text her, so I'm texting her now. Hey, Show Jungle. Thank you for being here tonight. All right, I got 903. You guys know my patience is low. So we're gonna go ahead and get started. And who's here will be here and we will have a good conversation, okay? All right. Good evening, everyone. Come on in. It's good that you're here. I'm super duper excited. We weren't here last week. There was just so much going on in the world, so many voices, so many people on social media. It was just so much going on. I thought it was a good time to just take a little step back and be quiet for once. Hey, Peggy, good to see you, my sister. To be quiet for once and to just kind of disengage. So my prayer is that you guys have been taking care of yourselves, that you have been protecting your ear gate, that you have been protecting your eye gate, that you have been protecting your heart and your spirit, because these definitely are some troubling times that we're in. And we're hearing so much. We're talking about so much. And people are saying so many things. There's so many lies just being thrown across, and just so much vitriol and so many things being said and done that it's been disconcerting and disheartening. Okay. And so I thought tonight, in light of all that we've been hearing and seeing, and just what the election, the aftermath of this election, that's where the process is still isn't over, but the aftermath, just left for me so many questions about what does it mean to be Christian in America? What is this thing we call Christianity? Because there seemed to have been such a huge divide, right? And what is it about politics, and where is Jesus in all of this? And everyone seems in the faith community to have an opinion about where Jesus is. But when we look at the behavior and the activities that is happening, it seems to be hard to see clearly where we are saying he is. So I wanted us to have this conversation. So come on in the room, invite your friends. Um, to come on. Cheryl, can you tag mommy? I think she's having trouble coming in. But first, let me just say, before I even get started, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you to all of you who supported the launch of the official Healing is the Only Agenda boutique. I so appreciate you guys. The boutique is open. Hey, Martha, the boutique is open. Thank you so much for supporting. Hopefully you've gotten some of your items. I have to apologize for the delay in shipping because I'm just learning this stuff, and I was supposed to do some stuff on the back end that I didn't realize I needed to still do. So there were some delays with that, but now we are running into some COVID delays where the mailing and the shipping is definitely being impacted. So I do apologize in advance. For those of you who are still waiting for your products, I'm hoping and we're praying that they will get to you soon. If you haven't gone on the store, the Healing is the Only Agenda boutique is open. Yay! You can find it at www.healingstheonlyagenda.net. There you go, Mom. Okay, the boutique is open. Go and look at it. I really tried to curate some really great products. And thank you to those of you who've gotten some of your stuff and you've given me your feedback. You've told me whether you liked it, but I got nothing but positive feedback. And so I am hoping that you guys would give me all the feedback, because if you don't let me know, hey, Dr. Elaine, if you guys don't let me know, then I won't know. So how your experience has been with the shop, and some of you helped me get over some glitches that I had. So I thank you for your patience with me learning this online e-commerce thing and having this store that is like my own store. I'm still so excited about it. Christmas is still coming. So be sure to go on and look for something, especially for that person that you know is struggling through the healing journey, struggling with self-care, which is probably all of us, struggling to find time to really slow down, take it down, and take a pause and just focus on themselves and their healing. All right, so thank you, and I apologize in advance for any shipping delays. Again, COVID has been impacted. So that is showing up as well. But if you've already purchased things, it's coming. I promise it's coming. But definitely, once you get your items, let me know how you like it. If you don't like it, what you think I should add to the store. We also have our own page on Facebook, the #Healing is the Only Agenda boutique, where you can actually buy from the page. If you don't want to go to the website, you can buy from right off of Facebook for the Healing is the Only Agenda boutique on Facebook. Okay. All right. So let's get to this conversation, because I don't know about you, but my spirit has been vexed. My spirit has been grieved. My spirit has been in a place of just turmoil after this election, during this election, and just though to see the numbers, to see when you get the data in your face, it's hard to ignore it, right? When you get the data in your face, it's hard to ignore. And so I couldn't help but ask, and some of you guys have saw me post about it, what is happening in the world today? And when we think of Christianity, when we think of politics, when we think of Jesus and his presence in the world and his purpose in the world, what is actually going on? So, I mean, this election and things that we've heard and seen, you saw me post so many different preachers, particularly white quote unquote brothers and sisters, really going so hard for Trump, really going so hard for a side, really going so hard for this political agenda that seemed to just uh, um, it just almost felt weird. It just felt strange. I've seen so many things, so much of it being called demonic, so much of it being called cultish. So much of what we have been seeing, particularly from the white evangelical side, has been this push for Trump and for republicanism and nationalism, that it bore the question, what is this Christianity? Because I and you guys, I need you to comment. I need you to talk to me tonight, because perhaps it's me, right? But I think we got to a point in our faith, right, where we all worshiping Hillsongs, we're singing Hillsong music, we are seemingly integrated in a lot of our mega churches that are non-denominational. We seem like we have come to a place in our faith as Christians, both black, white, red, yellow, and green, that we had a core commonality, that we had a core understanding of who God is, and we have purchased our Max Lucado books, we have purchased our Joyce Myers books, we have been integrated into the faith together, and then bam, here comes Donald Trump. And then bam, not that we didn't see the push, the pro-lifers, we've seen that push, not that we didn't see that whole, push, with George, I think W. Bush. We saw some of it, but even some of us joined in on that bandwagon with them when it came to issues that we felt applied to us, right? That spoke to our values, like pro-life, as well as that anti-gay marriage platform that George W. Bush ran on. So we saw some of that, but then even some of the Black and brown communities was on that side. But this time, it seems like something different happened. It seems like something strange occurred, where in the face of so much more media attention, so much more social media attention, so much more evidence and data of the oppression of Black and brown people by the hands of police brutality, of the oppression of Black and brown people when it comes to healthcare disparities, of the oppression of Black and brown people. The evidence has been there. People have been telling us for years. There's no real legitimate denial of systemic racism, except when it comes now to Donald Trump and what he says. And then it seems like our white Christian brothers and sisters have gone on to that side, or maybe never left that side and we didn't know it. And now we have this huge divide. We have this huge divide in the faith, where it seems like the faith in Christianity has now got color lines. Now, doesn't mean it didn't exist before. I think what happened is we thought we got past it. Okay, what do you guys think? I thought we had got past it. I thought that we had moved. Oftentimes we talk about this post-racial divide. I thought, if anything, that it was probably, although our churches were segregated, I thought the segregation was based on just preference of worship style. Right, that I like gospel while they might like more contemporary country sounding faith music, contemporary music. I thought the divide was between the Dove Awards and the Stella Awards, right? I thought the divide these days was not still so steeped in racism, nationalism, white privilege, and all those other things, isms that we saw when we were being oppressed by those who carried the name of Christ from slavery days. But it doesn't seem like that's true. And that's become the disheartening piece, right? It seems like when it came down to with this administration, the lines got drawn back to some of the same rhetoric and the same mindsets that occurred when we had people pulling slaves from Africa, but writing some of our best hymns. It's occurring in the same place where we have people, burning crosses in the name of Christ on Black properties, hanging and lynching people, and calling these events religious activities. It seemed like we went all the way back to the 1950s, 19 slavery time, where the idea of Christianity and what it meant to be Christian was to be white, was to be privileged, and was to be racist. Okay. Oh, thank you, Kirsten. Cognitive dissonance is alive and well. Of course, she's going to cover it with the clinical. Thank you. It's so true, though. What has happened? How did this happen? What does this mean? Does this mean that we have not moved forward in our faith together? Does this mean that somehow, with all this pouring of the Holy Spirit in the latter days, and you got enough prophets to start prophetic schools, you got enough people proclaiming the name of Christ, you got enough people preaching, teaching, speaking in tongues, how did we come right back to the same place we were back in the 1950s, back in slavery time, when we thought it was about ignorance, when we thought it was about that they just didn't understand, when we thought it was about that they didn't get it, they didn't get how God saw us. They didn't see our humanity. They didn't see Black people as they saw us as property. So we thought we've moved from them seeing us as such. And I'm talking about the faith community. I'm not talking about the wider, white community, but the faith community. I at least thought we had gotten somewhere differently. Yet it's still Can you guys see me now? Can you see me? Let me tell you, the devil is busy, okay? Trying to shut down that conversation. Can you guys see me? I had to totally switch computers and everything. Yes, thank you, Kristen. I'm sorry about that, but just while we were getting into the heart of it, calling stuff out, you know how the enemy works. My whole computer just freezes. I can't even move it. I thank God I have two tablets here. So I was able to switch to a different one. But we're not going to let the enemy get the best of us, right? Because this is an important conversation. So let me just do some readjusting here so we can really, and thank you for hanging in there. Thank you for hanging in with these technical difficulties. Okay, let's try to get this together. All right. So I don't want to take a whole lot of time, but let's just have the conversation. I need to understand. And as I was saying before I left, it's been disheartening to see that it seems like we are essentially divided in our understanding of Christianity, in our understanding of politics, in our understanding of who and how Jesus shows up in both of these for along racial lines so often, right? It seems that for the majority of those white evangelicals and those people who supported a Trump agenda versus those of us who might have supported a different agenda. At the heart of it wasn't just a pro-life thing. It wasn't just about pro-life. It was about pro-life. It was about military. It was about just like this idea that this dude is God sent, right? Because he claims to be Christian and all of this. And I just don't understand what we were looking at, what we are seeing, and how do we understand Jesus. Then I heard so many people saying that Jesus isn't in politics. Jesus isn't about politics. We're all supposed to, not really engage him in our political agendas, that he's not about politics. And so I just wanted us to just have a conversation, maybe do some level setting. I hope you guys, if you're hearing me, come back in this so we can have this conversation. But let's first establish who and what Christianity is really. What is it really built on? Because I'm so confused. And I'm going to be speaking from books like a black theology of liberation. I think I shared this with you guys before by Dr. James H. Cone. Okay, that this is one of the premier books on what it means to understand liberation theology. And while I don't consider myself to be well versed in some liberation theologian, right? I feel like I'm more of a womanist theologian, but even in that, liberation theology is at the heart of it. Is let's just try to understand what we mean when we start talking about what Jesus and what God is all about. Because at the heart of this is the question, do white American and black Americans worship and serve the same God? Because I don't understand, if we do, how we could be so separated on some of the issues that we're separated on. Take away the people and put the issues on the table. I don't understand how we can be so divided. And that's because what I think has happened is those of us who understand what it's like to be oppressed, those of us who understand what it's like to have been born into an oppressive environment and condition, understand Christianity a little differently. But I'm just not sure why. When if we look at how God is in the Bible, God shows up as the God of the oppressed, which is another book by James Cone. He shows up, and we understand all of this. Even the Abrahamic faith is rooted and grounded in God's work with the community that's oppressed. The whole Exodus and the way that we, from the emergence of the Exodus into who Israel became, and their understanding of God was all grounded and based in the contextualization of oppression, of God delivering them from slavery, of God delivering them from those that oppressed them, from those that exploited their bodies, from those that was brutal to them, that didn't treat them. God, if you read the Exodus story, he heard the cries of his people in his ears, and he sent deliverance to them. So I don't understand how we in this country, in America, well, I do understand, but part of the problem is that we have moved, some of those that on the other side have moved away from understanding who God is and how he came to be understood as God in the Bible. You can't, Christian theology is a theology of liberation. That's straight from James Cone. It is a theology of liberation. If you don't believe that people should not be oppressed, that the oppression of anybody is appropriate, you can't really call yourself Christian. We at the Ten Commandments, all of that came off of the hills of people being in the wilderness, of him leading and guiding them out of oppression. So then how did we go from that God to then Jesus to an understanding of faith right now that would dare purport that the oppression of people is okay, that would dare support the oppression of people, that would dare say that really the only thing that matters is the unborn? How can that have happened? Somewhere, if you ask me, sin is in the camp. That's why we have this divide. Sin is in the camp. Okay? There's a sinfulness that is going on that is at the core of some of this theology. It's erupted again. We see it come alive and well again, and it is tearing at the heart of what we are calling Christianity in America. I don't understand. If we move from the Old Testament to the New Testament, then we can go right to Luke 4:18-19. Anybody remembers what Luke 4:18-19 is? Okay, Luke 4:18-19. Let's talk about it. It's when Jesus is in the temple and he takes the scroll and he reads Isaiah and he says, God has appointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. He sent me to proclaim freedom for the prisoners, recovery of sight for the blind, to set the oppressed free, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor. If that was Jesus's agenda, how did we move so far away from it? If Jesus clearly tells us by what his assignment was, if he told us that his assignment was, let's put it up there again, to proclaim good news to the poor, that means the marginalized. That means those on the outskirts of the community. That's who the poor was. That he sent me to proclaim freedom to the prisoners. That means those incarcerated. Those that's what prisoners are. Though this was not just a spiritual, that he meant the poor in spirit, that he meant prisoners in their spirituality. No, he's talking the actual poor, actual prisoners, recovery of sight for the blind. It had a dual message to it, not just spiritual, but the actual people, which is why his ministry was very practical when he healed the sick, when he raised the dead, when he set captives free, when he restored sight to the blind. He went out and did exactly what he said he was appointed to do. So then, how did we move from understanding who Jesus is and understanding why Jesus came to now being in a place where we have all this education? We have so many people have gone to seminary. So many people have gotten educated. So many more mega churches, all of this education. We have education at our fingertips. You can get papers and understanding, do all the research that you want to do on the Word of God. How did we come right back to the same place we were at before we had all this education, right? Before we had Google, before we had Harvard Business Review, before we had all of these different places where we can go and learn what is happening. There is sin in the camp. And I want to read something to you. Okay? Because I think, and this speaks to the politics of Jesus. For those of us who believe that Jesus wasn't a political being, you don't understand the historical Jesus. You don't understand then the context of how he worked. When Jesus was born, he chose to come through a lineage of oppressed people. He chose to be born during a time when those same people were still being oppressed by the Roman government. He didn't come as a Roman on top. He didn't come with privilege. He was born to a lowly carpenter, okay, and a young woman, teenage girl. He was not born rich, unlike some people of the prosperity gospel want to tell you. He did not come from rich background. And when he went to get his disciples, he pulled from that same demographic: fishermen, people who weren't necessarily the most educated, people who didn't have the most means. He pulled from the same pool of people. And when he went to do his work, he did his work within those same communities where there were sick people without access to healthcare, where there were sick people who were left on the margins of society that no one wanted to touch, no one would allow in the camp. He went right into the heart of those places and did his ministry. So then how do we say it's okay for us in our understanding of Christianity to be concerned or not be concerned about those same people? It's something wrong. They're sin in the camp. I want to read something to you, and I hope you guys get this book. It says the basic mistake of our white brothers and sisters, I'm making the words different so because you don't have the whole context, is their failure to see that God did not become a universal human being, but an oppressed Jew, thereby disclosing to us that both human nature and divine nature are inseparable from oppression and liberation. You cannot, well, let me go. The inability of American theology to define human nature in the light of the oppressed one and of particular oppressed peoples stems from its identity with the structures of white power. See, we got this all mixed up and confused. Okay, and some of us as people of color, we don't want to believe it. We don't. And this book was written originally in I believe in the late 1960s, 1970 is when Black liberation theology first came out, and for James Cone, let's say. So what we're seeing though is that there's a difference in our understanding because some of that other understanding is rooted in white supremacy, is rooted in white power. And we need to acknowledge it, and we need to talk about what do we do with it. Because I think what has happened historically is as people of color, we haven't known what to do with it except have our own worship service. We haven't known what to do with it except try to put the weight on our shoulders to bridge the gap. We put the weight on our shoulders to try and say, come on, let's reason together. Let's worship together. Let's be together. And let's understand that God does not want this racial divide. But yet here we are in so many of our spaces where whether or not someone has come out as being for Trump or not, it reminds me of the saying that Dr. King had said, his quote of, in the end, we remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. Far too many of our white brothers and sisters of the faith, quote unquote, the faith, have been silent about this. They have been silent. And then to now see how many of them are in their churches praying that someone who has no problem denigrating, dehumanizing a whole bunch of races of people, and this is who they're purporting to be the election of God, is horrible. It's beyond sinful. Kristen said, like the Pharisees, many white Christians are using religion to oppress and uphold. Yes, they are. But they're using it even more so. And what's so sad about that to me is that we have Black people and brown people who are in their communities. Some of these people that are doing this, they have lived off the backs of Black and brown people supporting their ministries, okay, giving into their ministries. Okay, some of them are pastors over predominantly Black churches. How then, if you're the pastor, do you not see our pain? Do you not see our community suffering? Do you not see? And again, how? And if you can be so blinded, if you can be so blinded to this, then how do we bridge this gap again? Where do we go from here with the Christian faith? Because guess what? Our young people, both white and black, are looking at this and they're turned off. They're turned off. They don't understand what is actually happening, because you got to understand they come up in a different time frame. For them, integration has always been, and diversity has always been what they've grown up in. The younger generation don't understand all of these differences and these major divides that our parents and grandparents have lived through, and some of us have lived through. So for them, they're seeing this all over. This is the first time they're seeing this, but then seeing it under the guise of God and faith is not only confusing for them, but it's definitely a turnoff. What do we do now? Where do we go from here now? Trying to understand what is God calling of us? What is he saying to us? And I think part of what has to happen is that us as the black and brown people, us that are representing the oppressed, us that are representing those who are captives and prisoners, okay? We got the mass incarceration. Those of us who are representing those people are speaking for those people who understand Jesus to be on the side of those people and wanting us to eradicate any sense of systemic racism and oppression in the world, because that was the work of the gospel. It wasn't just about our spiritual relationship with God, but also our relationship with each other. What do we do with this now? And I'm not purporting to have any answers. I think is what I'm saying is we have to start asking more questions. We have to start holding people more accountable to having this dialogue. We have to start asking our white quote unquote brothers and sisters, calling them on the carpet, calling them on the table, start having these conversations about what is it that is causing this universal seemingly blindness to the plight of the oppressed people in our country. How do we understand it to be okay to have cages at the border, but then say that God is pro-life? How do we then say that it's okay to have healthcare disparities based on just race and demographics and say that God, systemic racism doesn't exist? How can you see so many videos of black and brown people being shot in the back, shot down, when they've complied, when they haven't complied, when they're sleeping in their bedrooms, when they were innocent just at home, minding their own business, trying to raise their children, trying to go to work? How do we see the killing and murdering of these people to not be real evidence that police brutality and systemic racism and oppression is alive and well? Whose responsibility is it to bring these people along? That's what I want to know. How do we move from where we are? And whose responsibility is it? Because historically, it has fallen on the responsibility of the same oppressed people to try to disarm the white oppressor, to try to make the white oppressor understand that we're not a threat, that especially as good Christian black folk, we just want to serve Lord like you do. We just want to be good old black Christians, right? We don't want no trouble. It has historically fallen on our shoulders, and particularly the black woman's shoulder of late, to try to uphold the integrity and the morality of this country and the Christian faith. What do we do to change this? Is it changeable? Is this something that we can do? Do we just did God need this, allow this to happen so that we can see where the sin is in the camp? Did he allow this to happen so that we can start seeing where we need to really be doing spiritual warfare? Did he allow this to wake up some of us who have been sleeping and assuming that because we've gotten the chance to live in better neighborhoods with diverse with diversity and go to better schools and make more money than our ancestors ever thought we could potentially make, that somehow we've moved past this understanding of racism even within the faith. Jesus was revolutionary, which is why they murdered him. Right? Jesus was revolutionary, which is why they had to shut him up. It wasn't just about people turning their lives to God that the Pharisees and even the Roman government was concerned about. It was, what did this mean if people were going to start understanding who they were in him, whose they were, what he came to do for them, and then start demanding change on the other side. Jesus came disrupting things. He disrupted the status quo. He wasn't really big on religiosity. He wasn't big on talking the talk and not walking the walk. Think about it. Jesus came so out of the ordinary. Of all the miracles that he decided to make his debut announcement as God into the world, it was at a party. He didn't go raise someone from the dead as his first miracle. He didn't go heal the sick. He decided to be at a wedding, at a party, and he decided to turn water into wine to keep the party going. That is not your typical understanding. If we look at how people were thinking he should come, that's not how they thought he would come. They got on him. Why your people don't fast? John's disciples said, we fast. The Pharisees fast. How come you and your disciples don't fast? They came with their religiosity. They didn't care for Jesus' theology. They didn't care for this theology of him healing people. They didn't care for, like, really? Okay, they followed him, but then a lot of the church folk followed him and just wanted to press upon him. Well, who do you think you are? And they try to catch him up, right? They try to get him into these debates. This is what Jesus endured. So how then do we take this historical Jesus experience and turn it into something that really is just about gays and the unborn? How did Jesus work? How did his life, how does his example get turned into something that he never even addressed in the Bible? He never even addressed when he walked the earth. How do we ignore what he did address to what he didn't becoming more important? How did life in the womb become more important than the actual lives that Jesus came to save? The actual work of the cross was for those who were alive. It was for those who were already born. So how then did we turn it? Because it's not about those issues. Those are the smoke screens. Those are the smoke screens. The smoke screen is pro-life. The smoke screen is an anti-gay marriage agenda. The smoke screen is all of this other stuff that people are talking about, and not what Jesus really came to address. Because if we focus on what Jesus came to address, then we would have to change policies and procedures. If we focus on what Jesus came, then we got to stop the mass incarceration. We have to stop the oppression of Black and brown people wherever they are, whether in their own communities or not. We would have to do things differently. We would have to, and what's interesting is when you start talking this way, guess what they label you? A socialist. Then somehow you're into socialism. And if we look at Jesus, isn't that what he was really about? Without putting the politics to the understanding of socialism, didn't Jesus feed everyone? When he fed the 5,000, did not he make sure everyone had a meal? Did not the work of the gospel invite everyone to the table? So I don't understand what we're doing. I don't understand what we're saying. But what I do know is that we can't continue to be quiet about what's really going on. We have to start calling this stuff out. We have to start having conversations. And I'm so tired of hearing about why we can go back to being friends. as per E. Kenyon in the wonderful name of Jesus, states that we ignore the spiritual side of man. Yeah, we ignore the spiritual side and Jesus's humanity. Yes, Jesus was the original social worker. He was all about social justice. This is why it's so mind-blowing to me that people can say they're acting in the name of Jesus and not be for social justice and be okay with the oppression of Black and brown people. Jesus came practically healing. He didn't just heal sin in people's hearts. He didn't just heal them from the spiritual aspect. He met their physical, natural needs. He fed the hungry. He literally opened. Jesus was a doctor. He literally healed blindedness, not just spiritual blindedness, but actual blindedness. He became the traveling doctor. He went into towns and they brought their sick to him. They brought their unwell. They brought their mentally ill. They brought them to Jesus, not for him to preach them a sermon about what can happen if they just have faith. He actually did the work. So then if we are understanding who Jesus was and what he did, how can we be okay with this stuff? How can we be okay with the rhetoric of hate? How can we be okay with the rhetoric of oppression? How can we be okay with this? It's because there's sin in the camp, and the sin is called white supremacy and white power. The sin is called nationalism. The sin is called privilege. The sin is called racism. There is sin in this camp, and it has finally come to a place where it's tearing this country apart. So we gotta not just pray, but we gotta pray. We gotta pray. We gotta fast and pray because people have been deceived. People are being deceived. The enemy has blinded so many of our people to what's really the agenda of God, and it doesn't lie in one man. The agenda of God doesn't rely on one political party, because any political party is going to have parts of it that does not align with God's agenda. So you're not going to find God solely in politics, but you should understand the politics of God. The politics of God is to set captives free. The politics of God is to work on behalf of the poor. The politics of God is not to be so concerned about your taxes and making and losing some extra money when you make over $400,000 a year, but at the expense of those who can barely make ends meet. That is not God. That is not God. Thank you, Kristen. And yes, Carlos Rodriguez. And what's interesting is and disheartening is how many from our Latinx communities voted for this particular agenda. Okay, I'm not even going to say Trump anymore, but this particular agenda, which is voting against their own interests. Liberation theology, a lot of it started in our Latin communities, where the oppression is and remains so strong. And it started in Catholicism, with them calling the Pope and calling their Catholic leaders on the table about their neglect of the poor, their neglect of understanding that should not just be the state of humanity. So there's something wrong, and we got to get it together. We got to pray. We got to fast and pray for our brothers and sisters, because they have been deceived. They are being deceived. But then we also have to get out there and start calling on our voices, calling them on the table with our voices, and speaking real truth to power, asking your particular leaders that you're following, what is their theology about oppression? What is their theology And again, sometimes even in our Black and brown communities, we don't understand. We have such ingrained, internalized oppression that we have subscribed to our understanding of who God is based on how we've been taught it from this westernized Christianity. I'll never forget going to India and watching their version of Christianity and realizing how white my version was, how my version didn't have elements that as many elements that represented my African ancestry in it that it should have, because it was stripped when we got here in this country. Christianity did not start in America. Christianity did not start for Black folk when we got to on the slave ship. This is why we need church history, okay, and Black history to be a part of every new member's orientation, because we too have been confused and not clear about what God says about us and the plight of Black and brown people. If you still think this is about, okay, values, that this agenda that the evangelicals is on is about values, then you have been deluded and deceived, because those values are only one-sided. How convenient it is to only care about the unborn. And you probably heard me say this enough. We only care about not aborting the unborn. But what happens to those unwanted children when they're in foster care? Where is the Christian community then? Where is the white Christian community then? Because I know a lot of Black Christians who foster children, who go in and try to help and have adopted children from foster care. But we have a lot of our white counterparts, they'll go to a whole nother country and get other children, but won't get these same children that they fought to be born out of foster care. There's something wrong here. And I'm not agreeing with abortion. What I'm saying is that's like saying, I can't even think of an example because it sounds so crazy to me. How can I be pro-life if I only care about it in utero? But the minute it comes out, and it comes out Black especially, then I'm okay with it being oppressed. I'm okay with it not having good school systems. I'm okay with it not being able to get quality health care. I'm okay with it living in impoverished, crime-ridden environments. I'm okay with it having a target on its back, especially if it's a boy, by the police, because we automatically assume that by the time he gets into that baby gets into kindergarten, it's a threat. It's already judged more harshly. It's already criminalized. His behavior in kindergarten is already criminal. How do we say these things? I appreciate you guys being with me as I ranted on tonight. And again, I apologize for the technical difficulties. And thank you, Mom. And we definitely have to talk. We have to talk more about this. I will be having on my show some people who I do know are way more steeped in Black liberation theology, because I think we can no longer afford to not be versed in it, whether you're Black or white, because it's liberation theology. Let me just call it that. It's the theology of Jesus. It's the theology of God. God's theology has always been to liberate mankind from oppression, to liberate them, not just from sin, but to liberate them holistically. God wants us to be liberated from anything that's holding us down. God is the God of those who are heavy laden and burdened. We got to start getting back to understanding who that God is, and then how do we replicate who he is and was in the world in our day-to-day. Because right now we're in a terrible state. Christianity in America is in a terrible place, and some of it's on us as well. It's not just a white problem, it's a total problem. Some of us, we've been so caught up on just tithing and getting money and building bigger churches that, again, we have forgotten the holistic nature of the work of the gospel. That's not just about us coming together to worship. It's about those in the community. It's about those on the margins of society. It's about so much more than just us getting what we've been praying for, getting a new car, a new house, a husband, a wife, all those personal, individual things, which, if we tell the truth, is wreaked in capitalism and individualism, which was not God's way. I appreciate you all. Please share the video. It's a conversation we need to have. Um, I will definitely again be bringing this topic back to us again with some scholars that can come and really help us understand, what is Christianity really supposed to look like? Is it just about you're not supposed to wear this or wear that? Is it just about you're not supposed to smoke, drink, and cuss? Surely God's agenda was deeper than personal piety, was deeper and about more than our personal advancement and piety. So, my prayer for you is that you will reflect on these things. Again, the book is A Black Theology of Liberation. It's a must have as a Christian. I invite you to get that book. Also, The Politics of Jesus is another good book. I'm still reading that one, and it is really good, by Ober Hendricks Jr. And start having these conversations. Again, you don't have to have the answers to ask the questions. It's time to, though, put the questions on the table and start holding those who say and claim they have the answers accountable. And it's also up to us to start finding the answers. Until next week, again, thank you to all of you who supported Healing is the Only Agenda Boutique official launch. The store is still open. It's going to be open. Holidays are coming. Check it out and be blessed. Take care. Till next week.